Hello, guys, and welcome to a brand new episode of the Master Your Mental podcast. I'm super excited to discuss the title and content of this week's episode, Master Your Past, with my guest, Brock Bevall. Brock is an awesome dude that I connected with on Clubhouse in a podcasting room I was on a panel for. He is a former undercover cop who fought his way back from addiction. He is also the founder of Chase the Vase, along with a 30-day recovery program and challenge he put together. So I'm very excited to have Brock with us today to talk more about what Chase the Vase is all about and share his powerful story with all of us. So without further ado, welcome Brock to the podcast.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
I'm excited to have you because, just like I told you guys a little bit, we met in a Clubhouse room and I really liked our chat in that room. I really liked the conversation. I was like, yeah, like let's connect off of this and like get on the podcast. I'll get on your podcast, like share each other's stories because you guys know I love getting into anything and everything, mental health and mindset. So that's what we're going to do today. So before we dive in, tell us some more about who you are, what you do, and a little bit about your story.
I love it. So my name is Brock Bevall. I'm a dad, man. I'm a dad of 5 kids.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I got 2 blessings. I'm divorced and I have 2 step kids. And like you said, I'm a recovered drug addict, police officer, which is kind of interesting. So I should probably back up: police officer first, then drug addict, right? Then recovering drug addict. And then I just, when I went through it, and I'll get more deep into it, but when I went through it, it was just, I needed more. That's why when we linked up on Clubhouse, I'm not a huge fan of the AA rooms. And so I needed to venture out to still make that connection, to still get people in my life, but I needed to go about it a different way. And so I started my own business called Chase the Vase. It actually stems from a story called The Go-Getter. And I started a recovery program up north. I did that for 5.5 years, where I was helping men and women overcome addiction. So I've done that. And then I was like, I'm missing my avatar. I'm not hitting the people that connect with me. And so I kind of pivoted about 1.5 years ago, moved myself and my family down to the valley so I could work one-on-one, face-to-face with first responders that struggle with PTSD and addiction. So that's kind of like, in a nutshell, what I do.
I love it. I love it so much. And that's pretty much a little bit of what you told me in the Clubhouse room, because you were talking and you kind of told me a little bit about your background, your story, what you're doing, what you're up to. And I was like, this is amazing. This is super cool. I definitely want to talk more with you about all of this. So this is what we're doing. And I'm super excited to be featuring you, your work, your story, and all the things. So, on that note, I would love to talk more about Chase the Vase. So tell us more, like, what is it and what is the mission behind it?
So the mission is hope. I mean, if I could just narrow it down into one word, it's hope. In active addiction, we feel like, especially first responders, let me give you a story on how we're trained, and then that will give you the mindset of what we're dealing with. Day one, in the academy, maybe it was week 1 at least, we have our fake gun belts on, no gun. They individually call us out of the room and say, okay, here you go. We're going to give you a scenario to see how you handle it. We're going to give you this fake gun you put in your holster. You're going to respond to the parking lot where there's a domestic or there's an involvement happening in the parking lot. So, you get jacked up for this. I was super excited. Give me my fake gun. I'm out there, I'm walking, and I see this between 2 cars. I see this guy just pounding on this other guy. And so
is this a training or real?
Just total training, right? Okay. And they set this up, but they're making a point. And I remember my tunnel vision went right on that guy punching. So I come up, I draw my gun, I draw down. I'm like, hey, get on the ground, Mesa police. And a guy comes up behind me and puts a gun to my head and pulls the trigger, and it makes a boom sound. And he goes, you're dead. And I remember like, oh my gosh, like I felt totally unarmed, unprepared. And I turned around and looked at him. He grabbed me. He says, listen, keep fighting. You're never dead. And I'm looking at him like, dude, you just shot me in the back of the head.
Yeah.
And he goes, you're never dead. Keep fighting. And so that was kind of this mentality that I developed, and that first responders, military, firemen, that we developed in the line of duty. And so when the bad things happen, like addiction, we are willing to go till the wheels fall off, until we've destroyed our families, our friends, our careers, our children, just because that's how we're trained. We don't know how to stop. And so that gives you a little bit of insight. And so that is what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to break that stigma of, hey, listen, you can reach out before you break, before you get that DUI, before you get in a domestic altercation. Let's talk. Let's break the stigma. Let's break this chain of chaos and destruction, and let's pivot.
I love that. I love that, especially when you bring up the stigma part and breaking the stigma and really working to shatter that in people and like letting people know, hey, like, let's talk about this. Like, it's completely normal and a human experience to have, these feelings, these emotions, these things going on, these struggles, these, obstacles, hurdles, whatever is going on. And I love that, because especially when you're talking about addiction and like the role that mental health plays in that, and kind of like, how does mindset come into this play, and like peace with this. And I think that's so important because, especially with, your experiences and your story, being able to give people that encouragement. And like you said, like the main focus of the mission is hope, and like restoring that hope, back into people who might have feel like they lost it, like they feel like, oh, well, I can't, open up to anyone about my struggles or about what I'm dealing with or going through because, either of, being in an environment where you're taught not to do that, or maybe you grew up and you never got to have conversations really about mental health, or you don't really know much about it, so you kind of like push it to the side, like try to shut it down and just like keep moving forward. But I love that you encourage that, and that you like help to restore that hope back into people who feel like maybe they're not sure, like, can I talk about this? Like, can I go here with this? So I love that so much. And, I know that you also mentioned that you have a 30-day challenge as well. So I would love to kind of talk more about that, like what the challenge is, what it's done for you, and those who have actually completed it.
Cool. So the challenge is, so I ran the recovery program. I did all the therapy. I did the curriculum for a 6-month program. There's so much information in there. And I feel like that's one of the problems today with recovery programs, is they're just throwing information, right? I gotta throw you 45 minutes till I get billed for it. Right. And so that's kind of what I wanted to get away from. So I took that 6-month worth of curriculum and I narrowed it down into 60 lessons. And these lessons basically incorporate kind of a first responder theme. Let me give you an example. This is really cool. Not many people have heard of this, but I do a search. So when I was working narcotics, I wrote search warrants, right? And search warrants are probably the most intricate, minute, finite details that you have to do in a police department. You hear about departments hitting the wrong house, doing a search warrant on the wrong house. So that should never happen, right? Because that's how meticulous. Someone made a grave error if that happens, right? And so what I do is I take that same parameter of building a search warrant and I build it around you and say, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to infiltrate you, Paris. We're going to do a search warrant on you. And so what I want to do is I want to know where your weak points are. Where's the entry point at? How am I going to affect your brain? Where are you weakest? Where are you strongest? And so I take this and I break down the mental portion of it to where you can see, hey, what are my weaknesses? What are my strengths? What am I good at? What do I need to improve on? And so that's kind of the angle that we attack in this 60-day challenge.
I love that. I think that's awesome. And just like the way that you have it set up, because you said, so it's a 30-day challenge, but it's 60 lessons, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we
That's
do.
really cool.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And
We can do either one.
I love that because I think that that's so important, just to have an overall awareness of that. Cause, sometimes I feel like, when we're just going through life and like, the daily grind, like sometimes we aren't always aware of like every single aspect like that. Sometimes we forget, these moments where we get into a situation like, hey, you're at a red light. And if you're like me, like I'm a pretty impatient person. And that is something I know I need to work on. I'm not patient. I definitely need to work on that. So sometimes you can get into these situations where like you just are like, oh man, like you lose it, you yell at people, you freak out, whatever. And then you look back on that and you're like, wow, like that was not, nice. Like why am I doing this? Why am I acting that way? And I really like that because when you boil it down and you start to really get into that person and say, okay, here's what you're working towards, here's something you're struggling with, here's what strengths you have, and really like kind of like pouring into that person and letting them know that, and like saying like, hey, you're really good at communication, or you're really good at self-awareness, or you're really good at noticing things that trigger you or like or make you tick and things like that. But then also at the same time, like you can work on this stuff over here, and like and that's what I think is the most beautiful thing, is you can always make improvements and you can always continue to get better and learn and grow, as long as you're committed to that process and like disciplined, and you stay consistent with it. So that's really what I love about your guys' mission, like when you talk about hope and really like having those 60 lessons in that challenge, and just being able to help people identify this and really overcome these things. So I mean, I really love it. And I really would want to ask you too, if you could give me, what was the most helpful piece of advice that you have ever received from another person during your journey to recovery?
Ooh, that's a good question. I like it.
Thank you.
So I don't want to just spew it out. Give me 1 second to think about, because this is
Yeah, of
this is a this
course.
is super deep. Because
Of
I think we
course.
all have a lot of good information. The best information that I've had in my recovery journey, man. So if I'm going to self-reflect on this, it would be to find humility.
Hmm.
Especially in recovery, one of the most important elements is the surrender, right? And as a police officer, that is something that should never happen and doesn't
Hmm.
happen. Like, I don't want to surrender, Paris. I can't surrender. If I
Yeah.
surrender, it shows that I lost. It
Hmm.
shows that I failed the mission. And so being able to understand that I am human, that I had some major flaws in my life and that I needed help, but I needed to find the right help, and that's really important. We talk about people who are culturally competent, and you have to find those coaches. You have to find those people in your life. And I know that you're getting ready to start a program as well. And that's
Yes.
why people are going to align with you, because your mission is on their same page, right? Your mission and where you guys are going is the same direction. And so people are gonna attack to me because of my mission, and vice versa. And everybody's like, there's so many coaches out there, so many therapists. Listen, it takes a little bit of time to find the right person. So for me, the best advice I got was be willing to be humble, listen to people, and then search out those gurus in your life, those coaches, those people who can coach you up. Find them and stick
Oh,
with them.
I love it. I love it so much, especially when you hit on being humble and surrendering, because I feel like, especially when you talk about, your training and how you guys are not, that's like you said, the last thing you ever want to happen. So when you're able to do that and to actually surrender and, open up to vulnerability and realize that, it takes a lot of strength and a lot of courage to do that, to say that, you need help and you're dealing with this thing, you're going through this struggle, this scenario, this obstacle, whatever it is, and that you have awareness of that, and that you want to get out of that, you want to get better, and you're able to ask for help, you're able to share it with somebody. And to humble yourself, I think is hugely important, because I can definitely relate to that, and I know people listening probably can as well. If you've gone through any kind of struggle, whether it be with your mental health, physical health, nutritional health, addiction, whatever it is, sometimes when we're deep into that struggle, that's the last thing we want to do, is be vulnerable and, like take off that mask and be like, hey, like, I'm dealing with this right now, and put yourself out there, because it's almost like a fear of the unknown of, how will people respond? Will they judge me? Will they criticize me? Will they still be in my life? Will they still care? And then all these like overwhelming things start coming into your mind. But if you're able to make that step and do that, it's like you're positioning yourself for recovery, success, moving forward, like forward momentum. Because if you don't, it's, where else can you go from that moment, feeling stuck and feeling exhausted, drained, overwhelmed, stressed out, all these feelings, and it definitely is not an easy thing. It's not an easy thing to do. Especially, coming from your story, and then also kind of like my background, like to put yourself out there, and especially, if you're sharing that with the world, right? And being like, hey guys, I've struggled with that. But I think that makes you such an incredible person, because it's so relatable, and people are able to connect with that and say, oh, wow, this guy is a person, he's really like a real person who has, dealt with things, experienced this, and, whether it's traumatic or not, or whatever the effects were on you, you actually had that experience. And I feel like what you said is really true, is, people resonate with you, and then they want to be on your side, partner with you, work with you, grow with you. And they see that because they're able to connect with that, instead of, seeing like this side of ourselves that we want to show because it like seems more presentable or seems more idealistic of what we should be showing, than really this is the situation, and like this is what I'm dealing with, or this is what I've gone through. That's what I think is really awesome about you, is the fact that you were able to do that. Because, you know, there may be people out there, and I know there are people out there, whether they're listening right now or not, who feel like they want to do that. Maybe they're in a position where they've been really wanting to take that next step, and, whether that be open up to somebody, or, seek therapy, seek treatment, do something in that next step, but they're just not sure how to get there yet, but they know they want to do it. So I feel like hearing your story is definitely going to be able to inspire a lot of people who might be in that position and, dealing with that right now. So one of the other things I really want to ask you is, I always love asking people this question, because it's always a different answer whenever we ask this. So what are you currently doing in this moment to master your mental?
Ooh, writing a book.
Oh,
I
awesome.
am. I started. I
I love it.
committed. I committed last week to a good buddy. I've been talking about writing a book for a long time, but uh, something I want to tell your audience that you just kind of hit on is, we're only as sick as our secrets,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so, especially in addiction, especially in mental wellness, we hide everything. We don't want to expose ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Paris, we don't want to tell people those like really intimate details about our lives. So for me, writing this book, talking to people, I remember the first time that I shared openly about my pornography addiction.
Mm-hmm.
I honestly thought people were going to hate me and be like, this dude's gross, I don't want to talk to him again. Right. I mean, because
Yeah.
it's not the
Yeah.
most like, it's not the best way to come out with it. But I remember I was like, you know what? I've been hiding this for so long. If I don't talk about it, then it was like I was a garbage truck driving down the road, and I just had this garbage flying out both sides, all over, just dumping all over the street, right? It was just
Yeah.
overflowing of garbage. And when I was able to stop, slow down, and talk about it and say, listen, I have an addiction, I need help, I got to put it on paper, I want to share this with people and how I did it, because how I did it may not be how everybody else does it, but I know that I have a roadmap for some people,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Oh, I
And
love that.
so for me, putting it on paper, letting people read it, being willing to open up on those secrets, so I have no more. My wife is like, oh, there are no more secrets. Like, I've told her everything, even the things that I don't want to share, I do, because I don't want to be hindered by them any longer.
I love that so much. And just like the importance of that, like what you just said right there, being able to get to a place where you can do that. And you can, like you said, we are as sick as our secrets. I love that saying, because, like what you just said, so true, when it comes to mental health and addiction and things that kind of carry a taboo or seem kind of, like things that you wouldn't talk about with someone in like an elevator or something, like just like with a stranger, just talk about it all, right? So when you're trying to share that with someone, you do get these things that come up, like these hesitations of like, are they going to think I'm like weird, crazy, like what's going on with this person? But I feel like, like you said, if you continue to like let that sit inside of you, it eats away at you. And slowly over time, like you start to notice, like, who are you turning into? And it's almost like you start to become this person that, you know, maybe you're like, oh, I'm never going to be like that, or I'm never going to be that way. And then you start to become that way because you're guarding this thing like so heavily, like, and it can be something for everyone, right? Whether it's an eating disorder, a mental illness, struggle with addiction, pornography addiction, some kind of trauma that has happened to you in your life, and it just sits inside of you. And it is really hard, like we talked about, like it's not an easy thing just to like go out and say, hey, listen, like, here's this thing, like, I'm going to say right now, it obviously takes a lot of time and a lot of work depending on, the person and the situation and what's going on. And like, if they're comfortable or like how they're feeling, I'm processing that. So, I really love what you're doing and I think it's awesome. And, I'm super glad that, we were able to make this conversation happen and to put this
Absolutely.
out into the world, because I love people who do, anything out there, like on this playing field with mental health, mindset, addiction, any kind of recovery, healing kind of aspect, I think is huge, because if you're making a difference in at least one person's life, that's amazing. That's tremendous. If you have at least one person who can say, this person, this guy has really helped me and like really shifted my mindset, my focus, my just the trajectory of my life, that's huge. And I think it's amazing. So, I mean, like, I just really want to applaud you for the work that you're doing. And again, for coming out here, making the time in your schedule to have this chat with me. It was so great. I love talking with you. Always love getting the opportunity to chat back and forth with you. And I will definitely put a link in the show notes for everyone to check you out more. So just let the people know, like, where else can they find you and learn more about you?
So I have another challenge called
Okay. Yeah.
fightlikedavid.com. So it's a 7-day challenge. They can find me there. Chase the Vase website, Brock Bevall on Facebook and Instagram, Chase the Vase. I don't think I'm very hard to find.
I know.
I just love what I do, like you, Bears. I just want to help people. You asked how many people I've helped. I don't know. I know I get emails a lot. I have a lot of friends. When I ran the recovery program, we had a really great a rate of not returning to addiction, and they're still carrying along. And I just feel like it's a blessing. I'm glad I went through it so I can do what you're doing here and help other people. So commend you as well.
Oh, thank you. Well, I love it. This has been amazing. And to everyone listening, you guys, whether it is daytime or nighttime, I hope that you have a great rest of your day, night, and week. And I'm going to end it on that note and say bye to you guys and bye to Brock. So bye, guys, and bye, Brock.
Thank you.
Bye.